Oh, this is going to be a good one. Hey, what's up, everybody? Andrew Wall here, and welcome back to IlluviTalks. Holy moly. Some things happened, my friends. It got crazy out there in the finance space, and it's obviously impacting us here in the crypto space. My name's Andrew Wall, host and executive producer at Illuvium, and this is going to be an insane episode with so many important topics that we need to talk about. What do I mean? Well, the gaming industry currently not disrupted. We're going to talk about how the bank collapses may interact with DeFi, centralized finance versus decentralized finance. How does that impact the gaming industry and crypto and blockchain gaming industry that we are all a part of? There was an ETH rally, Bitcoin rally, hard assets rally, amongst all of these bank collapses. And there's also a narrative around that all of these bank collapses that happened recently are part of an anti-crypto message by the United States government. We need to talk about these topics because they directly impact us here in the blockchain gaming space and in the decentralized finance space. Now, really quick, this is not financial advice. This is not life advice. This is not romantic advice. This is no kind of advice whatsoever. In a freak series of events, all three of my guests for this show just could not come today. So you're going to get me, Andrew Wall, and just my thoughts on these topics. These are not the official opinions of Illuvium. These are my opinions, but it's really important, I think, for Illuvium to talk about these topics and at least start a conversation about them. So I'm going to share my opinions as Andrew Wall, the individual guy. Got it? Perfect. So let's kick off our first story today. And so our first story is going to be bank collapses versus DeFi. And so what do I mean by that? So in case you guys were living under a rock, which I know you guys were not living under a rock, the bank collapses happened with Silicon Valley Bank essentially being, sort of the headline bank along the way here. And so I'm not going to go over all the details of what happened in this collapse, but we have to talk about whether these major bank collapses are a boon or a headwind for DeFi. And as you guys know, this was the second largest bank failure in history. And banks like Silicon Valley Bank and Silvergate and what have you were the banks that banked a lot of crypto exchanges and on-ramps into the crypto space. And so we have to ask ourselves, are these bank collapses going to be a headwind for us or a boon? And so I like to take a look at the numbers. And the numbers are telling me, when I took a look at what happened, this is just my personal opinion, when I took a look at what happened with these bank collapses, as you guys all know, there was an immediate reaction and there was a rally in terms of the price of things like Ethereum. Just going to pull that up for you here. We saw a huge price rally in Ethereum. It went from down at like 1,400 up to like 1,700 in a matter of 24 hours. And we saw a similar move in things like gold and in things like Bitcoin as well. Bitcoin prices went up when the banks went down. And bank shares, as they collapsed, especially mid-tier and regional banks, and even all bank stocks collapsed, these sort of hard assets, these sort of outside of the traditional finance system assets ended up rallying and going up. And so I was asking myself, is this finally that moment that we've all been waiting for, I suppose, here in crypto, here in DeFi, where, there's the talk of the Great Reset, there's the talk of centralized finance finally meeting its end and fiat currencies dying like they've done in the past. You guys have heard all these narratives before. Was this the moment finally when some more of the public, maybe institutions, realized that the actual traditional centralized finance system itself was at risk? And so they fled out of that system and into decentralized finance systems. I was shocked, and I was texting with my friends when all this happened. I was personally shocked when the bank panic happened, and it happened so rapidly on social media, to see the prices of Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, and silver, essentially outside of the system assets, going up when there's fear. And so to me, this was a first indicator, and I'd love to know what you guys think in live chat. But to me, this is a first indicator that maybe the tides are changing in terms of the perception of things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. It was a moment, in my opinion, where we saw these assets become maybe a safe haven to many, when their bank may be failing, when they might not be able to get access to cash. Traditionally in the past, silver and gold fulfilled that role in the world for thousands of years, outside of government monies, as being the hard, outside of the system money you can bury in your backyard, you can put in your safe. But this time, Bitcoin and ETH went up by 20% in that specific moment. And to me, that said, there were at least some number of people in the order of billions of dollars that were in that moment of panic. They didn't flee necessarily toward the government. They didn't flee directly toward their bank. They didn't flee to the traditional solutions to these banking problems. They fled into DeFi. They fled into Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, and silver, and outside of the system solutions. To me, that was an indicator that, and I'd love to know your opinion in chat, and I'm looking at your comments right now, but to me, that was an indicator that if there is potentially a larger financial system collapse, or there is, let's say the Great Reset and these various doomsday predictions, let's say some version of those comes true in the future, to me that says there is some percentage of people that will see the space that Illuvium is in and the space that DeFi is in as this solution, not just some outside of the box, outside of the system, risky crypto bet where you're just hoping there is a greater fool. And so in this moment, I found that this space surprised me, and the sentiment shift surprised me. But that's just my personal opinion on that matter. But we have to ask ourselves a lot more questions about this. Is mainstream gaming, the space that Illuvium is in, vulnerable to bank collapses, let's say? And is it more vulnerable to bank collapses than, let's say, DeFi gaming? So the question we have to ask ourselves here is, here in DeFi gaming at Illuvium, let's say in our most recent Illuvium Beyond sale, this is where I was kind of going with this. This sale that was happening right here, and this is not financial advice, but for people that were getting in here and participating and purchasing these Illuvium products, right? They could do so using decentralized finance. They could use Ethereum, they could use SILV2, they could use USDC, and they didn't necessarily need to utilize centralized finance to participate with Illuvium Universe, Illuvium Game Studio, Illuvium DAO. However, if there is, and this is kind of where my head was going, if there is a larger banking collapse, or there's a liquidity crisis or a depression or a recession or what have you, traditional games that are relying on bank transfers, that are relying on people buying gift cards, that are relying on recurring payments coming out of traditional finance to pay for mainstream games, they might run into some troubles if there is a finance crisis of some description. Whereas decentralized gaming is actually positioned, in my opinion, to weather that sort of storm maybe more effectively than mainstream gaming is. Just imagine you're one of the mainstream game publishers, and you're like Blizzard Activision, let's say. And I'm just making up a number, but let's say out of the $10 billion you make per year, I'm just making up a number here, right? Let's say $2 billion of that each month, or even up to $3 billion are just recurring subscription payments that come out of the traditional finance system. Well, what if that system seizes up? What if those payments can't complete for 2 months? Let's say a month, 2 months. Let's say they can't complete for 1 week. What about all the cascading recurring subscriptions after that people do not renew in the case of a subscription or a depression? And so I was actually thinking that traditional gaming studios are actually more vulnerable in a situation like this. And I really hope it doesn't happen in a banking crisis situation. And I was actually kind of grateful almost that projects like Illuvium are able to sort of operate outside of that system and to interact directly with fans and customers and gamers through the blockchain and not being reliant on a banking system that's on sort of thin ice right now. I'm not trying to FUD banks. I have money in the bank like all of you guys. I'm not trying to FUD banks. I'm just trying to say being on these alternate rails in this moment when there's panic and there's fear in the market and vulnerabilities in the banking system, I saw that as being a boon for DeFi gaming and not being a headwind. Your opinion is welcome. But for me, I thought that was this is an interesting moment when we're seeing vulnerability in the traditional gaming space, and we're seeing sort of weakness, or not in the traditional gaming space, but weakness in the traditional banking space. I actually think that this could lead to weakness for gaming companies that are entirely reliant on the traditional banking, traditional credit card, traditional finance space for the recurring subscriptions on their mobile games, on their subscriptions. Imagine World of Warcrafts and what have you out there. If the banking system or credit card system seizes up, all of a sudden that juicy subscription revenue halts, and they would maybe permanently or semi-permanently lose tons of recurring revenue, App Store included, Play Store included. It was just a really interesting mental exercise I was going through, and I realized having, as a traditional gaming company, I wonder if those companies are now thinking, hold on, if there's risk in the banking system itself, maybe we should start onboarding maybe crypto payments, Bitcoin payments, ETH payments, and having an alternate, maybe even backup payment system for customers to be able to buy their games and their services in the future in case this primary banking system seizes, shuts down temporarily, and what have you. It might actually be an existential risk to their bottom line and to their revenue streams. Nothing certain, obviously, but thank you for discussing it in chat. I really appreciate it. But those were just my initial thoughts on that with, sort of DeFi gaming versus mainstream gaming. There's so much chatter out there about how DeFi gaming's better because the customer gets to own, or the gamer gets to own, their assets. But in this moment, in this sort of banking crisis moment, I was thinking it's actually great because the customer can interact with the games they want. They can buy the things they want on the blockchain, and they don't have to worry about their bank account. They own their crypto. They own their keys. They can decide to go purchase, own, trade, sell, whatever they want on the blockchain, even if the banking system seizes up. It's not just you get to own it. Isn't that cool? It's you get to continue to do your gaming things, even if the traditional system seizes up. Isn't that cool? I thought that was pretty cool. And in this moment, I kind of begun to actually see that and believe that as an individual. Just my opinion. I'd love to know what you guys think about that. But also, this moment, before we talk about the social media impact of all of this, because all of this stuff is sort of blowing up and taking off because of the gas that social media and the amplification that social media can kind of put on these sorts of situations today. But I wanted to bring up let's say the latest banking crisis that's on the horizon here as something to note. Because of things like Twitter Spaces, because of things like trending items on Twitter, news spreads incredibly fast about every potential finance risk that's out there in the system. And today, the bank stocks continue to fall. JP Morgan Chase is down by another 5%. And Credit Suisse, I was just in a Twitter space, it's a systemically important bank, as they call it. And now the markets are saying there's a 48% chance of a default. So I was thinking, this is so much different than when I started on the internet. When I started on social media in 2009, right after the first financial crisis in 2008, where panic, fear, even a whiff of the slightest financial crisis or the slightest bit of FUD with this sort of crash. Let's say this ends up turning out like 2008 with the banking sector. Let's say it does. The fact that we have social media and you can in real time understand all of the different aspects of what's going on, I think the potential for panic and for fear to spread is 10, 100, 1,000 times greater today than it was in the 2008 financial crisis. And I'm concerned about that personally. I mean, if you go to Twitter and you go look at the top trending items in news, what has it been the last few days? Deutsche Bank, banking crisis, National Bank, be your own bank, Lehman Brothers, 40 BTC, Credit Suisse. The top trending items are all of these banking crisis items. And so even if there's just a tiny whiff of bad news, let's say, or something that looks somewhat questionable, it can become the top trending thing on the internet that everyone's talking about and then virally sharing. I think this creates sort of a breeding ground and maybe like a gasoline on the fire for there to be faster crashes and obviously faster rips after the crash as well. It's a really different dynamic today, whereas in 2008, the whole narrative around the financial crisis was controlled by TV and the media, mainstream media. This was pre-social media. This is pre-YouTubers, pre-you being able to watch an individual guy like me cover news topics like this on a talk show. You had to hear it from your CNN host. You had to hear it from CBS Nightly News. You had to hear it from your newspaper then in a controlled narrative where, generally speaking, the people that were giving you the message were trying not to panic people. Whereas today, as much panic as people want to have, they can have on the internet about these financial crises. This is a very different situation in terms of fear in these sorts of situations. And I think we might see, if these banking collapses continue to spiral the way they are, we might see maximum fear at a level that we've never seen before about finance in general. Curious to know what your thoughts on that are. And so I started asking myself, I've never done one of these kind of ranty style shows here at Illuvium. I used to do these for other topics on my own. But I started thinking, well, what about a financial, how would a financial crisis impact demand for gaming products? Would this be a boon or would this be a bust for financial products? And I saw a headline this week that kind of started to help me form my opinion. And let me know if you guys saw this headline as well, but check this one out. In CSGO, you guys are familiar with Counter-Strike Go, an AK-47 skin in that game, one that you don't even own, it's just on their servers, sold for $160,000 in one of the biggest skin sales ever. And this is with banks, collapsing, let's say. This is with any unrest or any woes in the market right now. And somebody decided that they were going to pay $160,000 for this CSGO skin. So this got me thinking. You guys remember when COVID hit and everybody was stuck indoors and there was a crisis in that moment? The amount of people watching live streams, the amount of people playing video games, the amount of people going into escapism in that moment reached an all-time high by all metrics. And I used to analyzed all the industry reports. There were more live streamers, there were more viewers of live streamers, there were more searches for games, there were more downloads in the gaming sector in that moment of fear, in that moment of economic collapse than there were ever. And I was asking myself, let's say there is a financial crisis that's about to happen. Let's say that there is a big recession or a depression. Let's say there is cascading banking collapses after this. Will this be a boon for gaming, or will this be a bust for gaming? You guys go ahead and type into chat right now. Do you guys, and I'll pull you up your chat right now, let me know if you think that a crisis would be a boon for gaming or a bust, and then I'll share my opinion. I'll start talking about my opinion, but I want to know, it's right over here. You guys share your opinion. But personally, I believe that it would be a boon. If COVID was any indicator. In times of crisis and in times of distress, people go to their escapes, right? They might turn to, libations, and they'll turn to video games and escapism. They'll pull out their mobile phone and play more mobile games. They'll sit down at their computer and play more video games maybe all night. They might drink a little bit more, right? They might eat a little bit more. They're going to do those things that help them with escapism. Looks like you guys think bust. Some of you guys think bust. But personally, I think that escapism is very intoxicating. And we've seen time and time again in times of distress and despair, escapism ends up thriving. Think about it. You got to pay the bills first. JK, I agree with that. That makes sense. But, think about where all of the best music, the best art, the best movies, the best culture, the best escapism in human history, where does that come out of? That comes out of the poorest places, that comes out of the worst of times, and that comes out of the most unbearable adversity. That's why New Orleans, for example, somewhere I used to live, somewhere that's basically like living in a third world country. It's one of the most violent places and unsafe places to live in the United States. It has some of the best culture and music coming out of that place. And so from adversity and from bad times culture, humans bring the best culture, the best escapism to the table because they need it to get through their day-to-day, because their day-to-day is unbearable. And so I think that will be a factor if there is a major financial crisis. But I agree that, look, if there is some sort of mega crash, or if everybody's mainstream bank were to end up crashing, I'm not saying it will. I'm not fudding. Thank you for all your opinions over here. But I'm not saying it will. But I think in that moment, I think the power of escapism and the power of people wanting to feel good for a moment in a day when everything looks hopeless or everything is unbearable or depressing, I think that would be more powerful than you might imagine. If COVID was any indicator, and I know that was a special case. If you're not rich, you're screwed, Sen. I completely agree with you there. It was really interesting to get your opinions. I agree with a lot of your opinions there. I want to talk before we have a lot more to talk about here, but I want to address the narrative that people are seeing these sort of seeing these bank shutdowns and seeing this collapse or the cascading collapses and recent events as being some sort of targeted U.S. government anti-crypto takedown. I want to address that, and I want to get your opinions on the matter. Let me take a sip of coffee here, and you guys can enjoy this message from today's sponsor, Illuvium. I'll be right back.
Illuvium Beyond is a collectible card game that combines stunning visuals and competitive fun. IlluviTars are creative, hand-drawn versions of our Illuvials that exist beyond the Illuvium Universe. IlluviTars have distinct expressions, backgrounds, accessories, and finishes that differ in rarity and determine their power rating. IlluviTars and accessories are sold in two types of discs, Standard and Mega, with the latter containing a guaranteed rare Illuvitar. You can load your disc immediately, save it, trade it, or sell it. Illuvitars are sold in waves, with ultra-rare, highly sought-after alphas kicking off each wave in a time-limited sale. Permanently bond accessories to your Illuvitar to boost its power rating with 5 slots: skin, body, eyes, head, and props. There are billions of potential combinations, so you can make your Illuvitar one of a kind. The Hub is a central location to manage your assets, browse the marketplace, and track your progress. Here, you will find the Illuvitars album, where you can gain points by placing your Illuvitars inside sleeves to complete collections and achieve milestones. Climb the leaderboard by stacking album points and rank up from bronze to diamond to earn exclusive borders for your Illuvitars. Unleash your competitive nature and don't miss out on the most eye-popping and addictive collection game of all time. Go to illuvium.io/Illuvitars to learn more.
You know where to go, everybody. I just said the website in that video. Thank you to Illuvium for sponsoring this. But go to the Illuvidex, and we've got our extended run going right now. If the alphas were too expensive, no problem. I totally get that. But now you can buy an Illuvitar disc for what is essentially $8 now. Pretty easy to grab that. You get a random Illuvitar, 3 accessories, and a bonus tier 0. Anybody can afford $8, and then the mega discs are around $40. You can pay an SILV2 or ETH. It's just so fun. And we've got some folks in chat like Seaton that are breaking records out there and basically collecting so many Illuvitars. So far, 112,000 Illuvitars have been minted. 11,000 of those were those ultra rare and beautiful hollows. 168,000 accessories. It's nuts how much activity has been happening here in Illuvitars. And the most powerful Illuvitar so far is this suspicious squiz with 6,500 total power rating. Look at that look on that Illuvitar. I love it. Come in here. Come have some fun with us. We're going to be doing disc battles with some celebrities later today. The founder of Synthetics is going to be here with me. I've got some guys on with Bored Ape Yacht Club. They're going to be doing some battles later today on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And I hope you guys will join me for these fun disc battles and participating in Illuvium Beyond. It's been a blast so far. So thanks for everybody. And thank you to our sponsor, Illuvium, for coming along with that. So the last segment I wanted to do here, and I really wanted to discuss this with my guests, but you know what? It is what it is. It's the whole idea that, and this is a narrative that's been going around, and this is something that was spread by Barney Frank. You ever heard of Dodd-Frank Act? It's a huge piece of basically of law that came into place that governs a lot of United States finance. But anyway, he said that the Signature Bank shutdown was supposed to send an anti-crypto message. And so we've seen, now there's this narrative and conspiracy theories, let's call them. We don't know for sure, and we'll never know for sure. Are the bank shutdowns, are the recent crypto crackdowns that are happening a part of a United States concerted effort to shut down crypto and send an anti-crypto message? A lot of pundits out there, like Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank and various others that talk to politicians regularly, have said that politicians are tired of hearing about crypto and they want it to just go away, is a lot of what a lot of people have said. I'm curious to know what you think on this topic, but the thing that matters, the material thing that matters, is that if you are using centralized crypto services such as I Trust Capital, I use this one. They keep cash, for example. This is the retirement accounts for crypto. I'm not recommending it. I'm just bringing this up as an example. People have been Googling, is my money in the crypto centralized exchange FDIC insured? Well, the thing is, folks like I Trust Capital use Silvergate Bank, the one that just went down, Silvergate Bank to hold your cash. Also, Coinbase and Paxos recently disclosed their exposure to the failed Signature Bank. And so you have to ask yourself, to what extent if there is a U.S. government crackdown, a concerted effort, I'm not a conspiracy theorist and what have you, let's say there is some concerted effort, is it working? Well, to a certain extent, it isn't, I would say, because they ended up, they didn't bail out these banks, but they ended up backstopping these banks and paying out FDIC-insured accounts. So this may have shut down some on-ramps into crypto. That is a negative impact of crypto coming into places like Coinbase and coming into places like I Trust Capital and various other US-based exchanges. But nobody lost their money. Nobody was wrecked and nobody was devastated by it. And even in these moments when these banks were closed down, as we covered a moment ago, the Bitcoin price, the Ethereum price, the silver price, the gold price, the price of hard assets outside the system actually shot up. So in my opinion, if this was an anti-crypto move, which I'm not saying it is, I think governments are good fundamentally and they can make mistakes though. I think that if it was a concerted effort, it completely backfired. And as we've seen in the crypto industry coming up into this point, I think that if there are continued crackdowns on US banks and US on-ramps into crypto, it's going to push people more toward DeFi and more toward just using the blockchain in order to move their money around on the internet. A lot of folks that are in the United States, I'm not recommending this, I'm just stating a fact. A lot of people that are in the United States, like I am, have moved to offshore exchanges in order to do their bidding, to do their business in the finance sector, or have moved to DeFi, the space that Illuvium is in, to do a lot of their financial transactions because they haven't been allowed or it's too cumbersome here in the United States. And that has, in my opinion, continued to backfire on governments that have been trying to get a handle on crypto. The more you kind of push it out of your country, the more people will just kind of go around it on the blockchain and subvert the system or go around the system in order to do what they want to do. So in my personal opinion, and I'm curious to know what you guys think here in the comments, put in chat yes if you think this is a concerted effort by the US government to send an anti-crypto message, and put no in chat if you think that it's not necessarily, and this is just governments doing what governments do, and this is not some conspiracy theory. Personally, I think the truth always lies somewhere in the middle, personally. But I think that as DeFi has shown us, as just decentralized finance in general and the popularity of hard assets, silver getting so much more popular, gold getting so much more popular, Bitcoin, Ethereum becoming so much more popular, and big New York Times best-selling books, for example, about the folly of the fiat system, about the changing world order by Ray Dalio, top podcasts like Joe Rogan covering these topics, even guys like Jon Stewart bringing on people that are anti-fiat. The word is getting out about basically the weaknesses of the traditional banking and finance system, and people are beginning to understand its flaws, and they're beginning to see that there are solutions outside of that system that are available to you right now. I don't want folks to have to to put themselves in a position where they're going to do something that their own government does not want them to do. So I encourage the US government to put into place cohesive regulation and cohesive rules for operators to be able to interact with crypto companies, projects, and DAOs. And everybody that I've ever talked to in the crypto industry, the DeFi industry, the NFT and gaming industry, that I've ever talked to that's any sort of decision maker or has thought about it for more than 1 minute is just ready to comply. And they're just ready to follow whatever the regulation, the rules, the laws are, and the rails are. Because ultimately we want to reach mainstream. We want to reach 99% of people out there that have yet to come into this space. And everybody knows that you need to play by the rules in order to do so. But just kind of playing whack-a-mole and smashing various institutions or on-ramps to the space and still not making it clear what the rules are, that is clearly not viable. So I see some silver people in here. They want the CBD. So I see some of you guys are on the same page. You like silver. You're worried about central bank digital currencies. You guys are in the trenches there, in the threads there, with folks that are seeing a dystopian future. Look, I know that it might be a little weird for me to rant on these topics, but given that my guests were unable to come onto the show today to discuss them, I just wanted to share my personal opinion, and I appreciate you guys sharing your opinions on these topics. I'm personally going to keep a close eye on everything happening in the banking space and in the finance space. I just want all of you guys to stay safe. If you're starting to feel like the whole world's collapsing in on you and everything's about to go down, just realize you've probably chugged too much social media. Put your phone down. Go out in real life, and it's a beautiful day outside. It's sunny outside. Put your phone down and realize what matters in your personal circle and in your personal world, okay? And stay safe, everybody. And I guess what I'm trying to say is don't get too deep into the FUD and the fear. There's basically a fire hose of information happening at any moment. I find myself getting caught in it all the time as somebody who has to follow the space, jumping into every Twitter space, jumping into every Twitter thread, every Discord server, people that could maybe feed you all sorts of information about why you should fear the financial situation out there in the world right now. I would encourage you to go focus on what's truly important to you. Your friends, your family, maybe the games you love, maybe the communities you love, and make sure that they're safe and look out for them. Got it? That's what really matters. And all of this other stuff is just noise in your life. Thank you so much for watching IlluviTalks. Maybe next time I'll actually talk to someone other than my camera. Thank you for watching. And today we have 2 additional disc battles that we're going to be doing. 2 celebrity disc battles. Kane Warwick, the Warwick brothers, going to be here. We're also going to have, like I mentioned, 2 Basie owners and council members doing disc battles right here on all of our socials today. I hope you guys can join me for those. Those will be fun, and those will all lead up to a final disc battle where there will be $25,000 in a prize that we'll be giving to the charity of the winner's choice. It'll be really, really fun, and each individual disc battle will also give charity money. Adios, everyone. Stay safe out there. See you in the next episode of IlluviTalks.